adjudicate Donald Trump. We can argue that President Trump came up at 2:30 in the morning and talked. He should have done it at 11 o'clock at night in 2020. Are you urging him to do the same thing?
I'm urging President Trump, if the votes come in like it looks like they're going to come in, he should step up and inform the American citizens of exactly what's going on and not keep people in the dark like was done in 2020. So President Trump should step up and walk people through state by state of where these leads are and how these leads came about. We're not prepared to have in the dark of night all the problems that happened last time. Okay? The 2020 election was stolen. Okay, I will never back off that.
And we know that you wanted him to stay on as president. We know that you wanted the electors from multiple states.
What I wanted was I wanted the will of the American people at the ballot box to be effectuated. I want the will of the American people at the ballot box to be effectuated. That's what I wanted.
Steve, Robbie Roadsteamer here. I'm wondering, when's the next insurrection, and can we storm the Burger King after this? Like, can we do that? I mean, doesn't he look great now? We were in Danbury the first month together. He looks great. You don't remember me? We were lifting weights and stuff in the weight room. When's the next insurrection? How are we gonna do this and stuff, man? You know what, if I'm leaving, I'm having a good time. He looks like Yoda with AIDS right now. Robbie Roadsteamer, no political violence, people. This place smells like mothball.
The first statement I think I made from Danbury was about 4 weeks ago, September 26th. I said victory is at hand. That you can see the collapse of this kind of phony campaign by Kamala Harris, the politics of joy, right? And she had nothing to back it up whatsoever. And you could see the beginning in the polls start to come our way. I'm very proud that the War Room has had President Trump's back, and particularly has been the platform for the grassroots movement to have their voice heard. And I said at that time that with the hard work of the Get Out the Vote effort and the election integrity effort, that we were on the cusp of having an incredible victory that could actually be a potential landslide. Now we come to today, and I'm finally out of being a political prisoner by the Merrick Garland, Kamala Harris, Nancy Pelosi regime. Okay, for standing up for my political beliefs against an illegitimate committee in the House that did not have a ranking member and did not have minority counsel. I went to a federal prison for 4 months. Now, Nancy Pelosi and Kamala Harris and Merrick Garland thought they were going to do two things. Number one, they were going to shut down the War Room and not have that as a voice for the grassroots movement of MAGA in this country. And number two, break me. Well, I think you can see today I'm far from broken. I've been empowered by my 4 months at Danbury Federal Prison. Why was I empowered? Because I was able to listen, to observe, and to learn from working class minorities, young African American men and Hispanic men, and yes, Puerto Rican men, about what their lives are and what the queen of mass incarcerations, which is what they believe that Kamala Harris is. She refuses, and she has refused as board czar, to commence any mass deportations of illegal alien or illegal migrant criminals in this country. And today, President Trump with the angel moms actually had to say, we need to set up a form of restitution to reimburse these folks. Kamala Harris, Vice President Harris, as the board czar, has refused to do that and continue on the mass incarcerations. Now, President Trump, and quite frankly with the visionary leadership at the time of Jared Kushner, President Trump came with the most significant prison reform bill ever created, the First Step Act. And today, 6 years after and 4 years into the Biden regime, of which Biden in 2020 promised and committed to dramatically decrease the number of incarcerations in federal prisons, and nothing has been done. Nothing's been done. You know, this is criminal negligence by the highest let in millions of illegal alien migrants, illegal aliens, to drive down labor costs. The Federal Reserve said it from the very beginning. We're going to drive down labor inflation by getting more unskilled workers here and putting pressure on the lowest skilled sector we have. And they were successful, and they brag about being successful. The minority community understands that. They understand the scam and the con of what Kamala Harris has done. In addition, she has failed to do, for political reasons. The reason the First Step Act is not implemented among minorities is because Kamala Harris and Merrick Garland and Joe Biden in the White House and Nancy Pelosi understand it to be a massive political win for President Trump. And that's why they're failing to do it. Empowered. I am more empowered today, more focused today, sharper today, in better shape today than I've ever been in my entire life. So Nancy Pelosi, suck on that. The desperation of Kamala Harris and her campaign is obvious. They went from the politics of joy, and we were the first ones to call it, to darkness and night falls on America, and they pivoted hard. You know why? Her incoherent explanation for what the politics of joy is befuddled everybody. So she had to go back to the same playbook. Trump's a fascist. His followers are not deplorables, they're fascist. That they're a danger to the country. Well, you know who doesn't buy this? Working class people don't buy it. And particularly African American and Hispanic men do not buy it. I had a great opportunity at Danbury, and I want to thank the Education Department of Danbury Correctional Institution for allowing me to teach, yes, civics and government. I had, I think, close to 100 students in 3 different classes. The majority of, particularly the later classes, were minority men, African American, Hispanic, lots of Puerto Ricans, lots of Dominican folks in the Dominican Republic. And if you had a chance to read Vanity Fair, the cover story on our populist nationalist beliefs, you can see that it talks about economics. And it talks about the way the system works, the financial system in this country, how it's inextricably linked to the political system. And you can't understand what's going on until you understand how the economy, how the Federal Reserve, how deficits, how they play in.
Talked with former President Trump this morning?
We've had a chat.
Have you talked about Election Day coming up?
I don't want to discuss what we're talking about, but by the way, he watches the show. He saw the show this morning. The show this morning didn't talk about my time in prison. What it talked about was 2 things. Number 1, a massive grassroots effort that's underway, that has to culminate on November 5th, particularly in places like Pennsylvania. It looks like max 15% of Republicans will have voted on the mail-in ballot early voting. Before then, we have to deliver 85% of the people to the polls next Tuesday. He understands that we are the focus and back of people like the Elon Musk of the world and the money he's putting in for his effort, and Charlie Kirk and other independent groups out there that are putting in, that we're driving and enlightening the grassroots movement of the Trump MAGA movement to show up next week. That's number 1. And number 2, we had Bill McGinley and Mike Davis and others on to talk about the election integrity, the efforts that they're making, and quite frankly, places like Pennsylvania, that looks like the election administration is a little bit of a dumpster fire right now.
4 years ago, you urged then President Trump to declare victory on election night, when you knew all well that there was going to be a decent chance that we would not know because ballots had yet to be counted. He went out and did exactly that. Have you urged him to do the same thing on this election night?
Hang on a second. When I said that 4 years ago, it was, why did I say that? Why did I say that? Because a guy named Mark Elias came up with a report that 2 individuals, Bill McGinley and Raheem Kassam, helped deconstruct in July of 2020. And he walked through how the Democrat Party was going. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was a Democrat. Elon Musk was a very progressive Democrat.
They've all become awakened by the MAGA movement. Today, I think he's one of the strongest supporters of the MAGA movement. He's gone through a awakening that I think very few have come. I totally disagree with many of his positions, particularly about the Chinese Communist Party and others. But as an American, he has done, I think, something very smart. And that is put money in back of grassroots organizations and people to do something simple.
So you
and that's
don't mind,
hang on, and that's to get out the vote here in the 2024 election.
So you don't mind someone who would take a check from Adolf Hitler from Trump?
No, what I said is he's gone through a great awakening, right? And I think if you talk to him, he has gone through a great awakening. And I think part of that awakening is understand the power of the MAGA movement and the power of grassroots America.
I understand.
Please identify yourself when you ask the question.
Stephen Fasciola with Politico. I'm not sure if you saw, but the mayor got indicted while you were away, and there have been members of his legal team who say that his best bet is for a Trump presidency to succeed, and then Trump to pardon the mayor. I'm curious, what can you share?
I'll repeat the question so people can hear it. So this is a question about Eric Adams.
About Eric
and
Adams.
about he thinks about Trump's. I have no earthly idea about
You have no
Eric.
idea?
Well, not about. I know see what Eric Adams has been charged with, but I don't think. I think it's fine. I think it's.
amenable to helping Eric Adams?
I have no earthly idea about that. And all I know is President Trump thinks that New York City, this metropolitan area, is in deep trouble, right? Rising crime, the streets are filthy. I think President Trump has not been a supporter of things doing with Eric Adams, Mayor Adams' administration. So I don't know. You should ask President Trump that.
Steve,
Yes.
Andrew Race from New York Magazine. What are you going to do over that? You've got 6 days. You're out now. You've got 6 days between now and the election. Maybe some period afterwards, in which this will be still at stake. What are you going to be doing during those days besides the war room?
Well, there's a lot of different options. I'm of a strong belief right now. This is New York Magazine asking what myself and War Room's going to do. Obviously, with 7 days or 6 days left, you have to have a convergence of the get out the vote effort. I am not a huge believer in our ability to actually participate in rallies or do rallies, because right now I think President Trump does that great, and he has people along that are going to do rallies in the different states. Our focus is one thing, to make sure that we get as many American citizens either early voting while they can or to the polls next Tuesday. And so our efforts are question. Of course people don't believe in political violence. I was just a political prisoner of a regime that put somebody in prison for what has been a civil charge throughout the history of the country. I think, I've been told I'm the only misdemeanor that's ever been at Danbury prison. I think I'm the only misdemeanor. They told me when I was on trial in federal court in DC that I'm the first misdemeanor at a federal level. You know, CNN reported that wrong that day. I'm not guilty of a felony. That was a misdemeanor. So, listen, we have to go through this election. And who I think, if you look downrange for a second of President Trump's second term, that commences on January 20th, look at what's going to happen. Number one, the debt ceiling, we hit the debt ceiling almost immediately. Number two, you have the expiration of President Trump's tax cuts. Number three, the government runs out of money December 20th. It looks like it's not going to be an omnibus. President Trump has to deal with a massive fiscal crisis, okay? Economic and fiscal crisis. In addition, you need to start to do what Kamala Harris failed to do. That's the reason that African American men and Hispanic about a brutal reality in this country. So I think we have to be very upfront with people of what's facing us and what President Trump and his administration are going to face. And to the degree that we get to those investigations, which we will, it has to be done over time, it has to be done properly, and it has to be done so that the American people see that this was not partisan, that this is not to send Peter Navarro to prison, or not to not indict President Trump or former president 92 times. Okay, or not to send a guy like Steve Bannon that disagrees with you politically to prison. It has to be done in the right way.
Mr. Bannon,
yes, ma'am.
Hogan from New York One. You call yourself a political prisoner? If so, why do you think that you were released then a week before the election? Also, we're in New York. Trump just had a rally at MSG. You said you spent time with Puerto Rican men while in prison. Do you think that those comments by the comedians that spoke before Trump, were they racist, and should Trump condemn them?
Can I take the first part of your question first, which is, why was I released 7 days before? I think the math works out. If you take 120 days from July 1st till today, that's what my sentence was. Remember, the Bureau of Prisons said last week, the Bureau of Prison admitted I was eligible for part of the First Step Act. I should have been out on September 19th. according to the law of the First Step Act. Now, I'm just there on a misdemeanor for 4 months. You have individuals that have been there that are rotting years after their release date, that today don't know the release date for their families. This is destroying families. The First Step Act is not an executive order. The First Step Act is not just some sort of concept. It is a law. And the Justice Department and the Bureau of Prisons are, by criminal negligence, not implementing that law. And they're not implementing that law for one reason. Because to implement it the way it's supposed to be implemented is a massive political victory for President Trump, who's the only individual in this country that stepped up and had true prison reform. And this is one of the reasons that African American families and his situation. Why is President Trump, why is Florida no longer a battleground state? One of the reasons, and significant reasons, is the Puerto Rican support of President Trump and his policies. The Puerto Rican people in this country, American citizens, support President Trump and support his policies. Okay? So that some influencer or comedian says something, is it inappropriate? It's definitely inappropriate. Is that the policies of Donald Trump? Absolutely not. If you look at 218 and 219, why is he resonating with Hispanic families almost 50-50? Why with African American men? Because the economic policies of President Trump had blue collar workers getting higher increases than white collar. In 2021, when some of the Republican establishment abandoned President Trump, the MAGA movement started to actually get about organization, the precinct strategy, and other things like that, that become organizing principles for them. Right now, the thing that is most important for President Trump and his movement is to have his followers come together in an organized effort, right, to get at as many votes as absolutely possible. And that's the focus in the final 6 days. Remember, normally Thursday before the Tuesday election is when, you know, you get news stories, you get everything. So we don't say that. I believe that Jocelyn Benson in Michigan has said it's going to take a couple of days for Michigan. I believe the people in Maricopa County just said the other day it could take them 4, 5, or 6 days to figure things out.
And you think that that's legitimate? Because 4 years ago on election night, you wanted Donald Trump to declare victory. So what you're suggesting now is different than 4 years ago.
We have made significant changes, and mail-in ballots are not what they were. He told us, Mark Elias told us that campaign, and I believe this comes from the anti-democratic forces inside the Democratic Party. In shifting out when President Biden was taken off in 10 days off the ballot, it seemed to me at the time that they should have some sort of mini primary so that people like Governor Pritzker and Whitmer and Newsom and Shapiro, whoever else, wanted to jump in here and actually make the case in some sort of period of time up until the convention, could actually go and make a case of what they stand for. She started with this incoherent politics of joy. And she understands